In the entire catalog of Nicktoons, there might not be a brighter shining gem than SpongeBob SquarePants. As a network, Nickelodeon has a massive vault of absolutely classic cartoons with a huge amount of replay value. However, none may ever come anywhere close to how iconic and important that SpongeBob SquarePants has been for multiple generations. So many of us can't even go an entire day without dropping a SpongeBob quote at some point, a lot of times not even on purpose. Just kind of like autopilot responses to the things that happen around you or something that somebody says. It's a show that completely changed Nickelodeon as a whole. Let's just be honest, things never really were the same after SpongeBob came out. Whether you see that as a positive thing or a negative, it doesn't take away from how much of a cultural icon that SpongeBob would become. Out of all the seasons of the show that have aired over the past 26 years though, we can all collectively agree that the first 3 genuinely were the best. They were chock full of so many iconic moments that defined a generation, and a type of humor that is absolutely untouchable, in a league of its own. Arguably though, the most hilarious season between those 3 was likely season 2. It's a season that took everything great about the first one and cranked up the comedy to level 11, making SpongeBob stand out to an even wider audience than it had previously. And that's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're diving right back down to Bikini Bottom to continue a journey. A journey in analyzing SpongeBob SquarePants Season 2 with a central focus on just how amazing that it was and what exactly made it a phenomenal block in Nickelodeon's primetime slot when we were kids. If you're new to this series, hey, I've already covered part of Season 2 in a few different videos, and I've covered the entirety of Season 1 already, highlighting what made it so iconic and why it was so unique in its own way. This video, though, is going to cover 5 more episodes from Season 2 that without a doubt left us all in stitches. With that being said, I'll have the other videos linked down below in the description for you to check out after this one if you want to, and without further ado, let's get right into it. First up, we're looking at an episode that just paints Patrick in the most obnoxious light. An episode that I absolutely adore, but at the same time, it gets just a little bit frustrating at times. We're looking at none other than Grandma's Kisses. As this episode starts out, we see SpongeBob standing atop a hill, looking down on his grandma's house, excited to go visit her for a day of fresh baked cookies, story time, and a sweater with love in every stitch.
Grandma, Grandma, Grandma!
SpongeBob!
Hi, Grandma!
Come in and sit for a while.
Grandma, you make the best cookies in the deep blue sea. Oh, yeah. Grandma's cookies.
From there, SpongeBob's grandma lets him lick the spoon from the cookie dough while she tells him stories about when he was a baby. Sadly though, story time is cut short as the clock chimes and SpongeBob realizes that he's about to be late for work. Thankfully, his grandma is able to give him a ride to the Krusty Krab, but when he gets out of the boat, this happens.
You forgot your kissy-kissy.
I sure did. Bye, Grandma. Thanks for the ride. Thank you, Squidward.
Oh, brother.
Isn't this great? Everybody's in a good mood today.
I love bursting your bubbles, SpongeBob. They're laughing at you, not with you.
Just then, one of the fish in the Krusty Krab starts mocking SpongeBob's grandmother and the way that she talks to SpongeBob like a child. SpongeBob tries to defend receiving love from his grandma, but nobody cares. They just keep laughing at him as he tries to clean the lipstick off of his forehead.
I have been publicly humiliated for the last time.
I'm sorry that happened to you, SpongeBob.
Me too.
You're the most adult person I know.
Patrick tells SpongeBob that he just needs to not act like a baby around her and she'll stop treating him like one. He tells SpongeBob that he's a man now and it's time that he act like one. Unfortunately, though, SpongeBob says that he doesn't know how.
Allow me to demonstrate. First, puff out your chest. Now say tax exemption.
Tax exemption.
Now you must acquire a taste for freeform jazz.
Just like that, Patrick says that SpongeBob's ready, and we cut to the two of them on the hill, looking down on SpongeBob's grandma's house. Patrick gives him a quick pep talk, reminding him that he's gotta put his foot down and do what needs to be done. For one final preparation, though, SpongeBob breaks out his secret weapon.
I've been growing these babies for years.
Sideburns.
The two go to the front door, and when SpongeBob's grandma answers, she leans in to give him a kiss like normal, but at the last second, a visor pops down from a helmet designed specifically to stop her from kissing him. He begins to explain to her, in just the most condescending voice ever, that the kissing has to stop. All the while with Patrick having his back, being kind of a huge jerk about it.
Kisses are for babies, which I am no longer. I have grown up. It is nature's way.
Oh? You will definitely not be treated like a baby around here ever again.
I am glad you see it my way, Grandmother.
But what am I going to do with all these fresh-baked cookies?
Sorry, Grandmother. We adults don't partake in the consumption of sweets. Right, Patrick?
SpongeBob looks through the window to see Patrick sitting at the table wearing a bib and his grandma's cookie-eating hat as he just shovels down cookies like it's going out of style. SpongeBob understandably feels betrayed, given that Patrick was the one who suggested all of this and kind of led the charge to begin with. He goes right to the front door and knocks on it, asking his grandma if he can have a quick talk with Patrick.
Patrick, what are you doing? Cookies, warm milk, a bib. Is that a kissing mark on your forehead? We are supposed to be adults.
No roughhousing with a full tummy. The baby.
I'm the baby, I'm the baby, I'm the baby.
As SpongeBob sits there annoyed with Patrick, he says that being grown up is stupid and that he loves being a baby. SpongeBob looks down on him though, pulling out a toy pipe for blowing bubbles and telling him that he's caught in the awkward phase of diaper days. However, when SpongeBob's grandma brings plate after plate of cookies for Patrick to vacuum up, he starts losing his faith in the allure of being a grown-up.
It appears to be my lunch hour. Grown-ups have to eat too. I guess this will have to do.
You don't want this baby food. How about a big piece of steamed coral?
Oh yeah, great. Nutritious.
Next thing you know, SpongeBob's grandma is calling from the living room, saying that it's story time. Patrick excitedly runs to the living room where he takes a seat on SpongeBob's grandma's lap and prepares to hear a wonderful story about a magical sea leprechaun.
Oh, SpongeBob, you wouldn't be interested in this baby book. Here's the technical manual on routine active maintenance.
Oh, great. Yeah, fascinating. No pictures, just the way I like it.
SpongeBob sits by reading his technical manual while Patrick enjoys a cookie listening to his story. As he eats the cookie, he accidentally bites his finger though, leaving him in tears while Grandma gives him a kiss, trying to make him feel better while SpongeBob sits there still pretending to read the book, jealously watching. From there, though, things get astronomically worse, though, when SpongeBob's grandma pulls out a gift that she made for Patrick.
All right! Another hat!
No, Patrick, it's a sweater.
Huh?
With love in every stitch.
No. Duh. Don't I get a present, Grandma?
Oh, I almost forgot. Here's some office supplies. I didn't wrap them. I knew you wouldn't mind.
At that, the clock strikes 3 and SpongeBob's grandma basically tells him to get out and go to work without so much as even saying goodbye. Meanwhile, she continues to baby Patrick, preparing to put him down for a nap.
Here I go.
Come again if you get the chance.
Out into the cold, grown-up world. Alone. Without a sweater.
Toodaloo. Shh, he's asleep.
So long.
The door doesn't stay closed for more than 2 seconds before SpongeBob slams it open, crying his eyes out and telling his grandma that he doesn't want to grow up and that he wants all the same exact treatment that Patrick got.
I want a sweater with love in the stitches. I want to wear tighties. I want to ride in my wagon. I want to cuddle waddle with Mr. Stuffy Kids. I want to rock in my seahorsey. And I want kissy on my boo-boo.
SpongeBob's crying gets to the point of full-blown hysterics as he straight up hyperventilates, spraying tears like he's a hose. He goes from rolling on the ground freaking out to crying like a lawn sprinkler to straight up crying in his own open mouth. Through the panic though, his grandma tells him to take it easy, having to full-blown pinch his lips to get him to stop. She explains to him that he doesn't have to be a baby to receive her love, and that it's completely okay to be an adult and still get kisses from your grandmother.
Here you go.
Thanks, Grandma. Grandma, could you not mention this to the guys down at the Krusty Krab?
No problem.
Dude, this one is genuinely such a good episode. I'll be honest and say that the journey, again, does get grating at times, especially as it pertains to Patrick, but other than that, this one is such a great one that comes with a really strong life lesson. The biggest of which is, who cares what other people think? Like, just stew for a second on the fact that all of this happened because SpongeBob was embarrassed about what some random, fully grown adults thought about the fact that his own grandma loves him. A group of older adults who, like, let's be honest, I don't mean to go so morbid, but a majority of them likely don't even have grandparents themselves anymore. Because grandparents don't last forever. I get that it's the driving force behind this plot, but ultimately, in a real-life scenario, if something like this happened, it would be the biggest and most valid case of who cares for even a second about what these people think. What, they find it funny that someone else gets love and affection that they don't receive? Okay. I think it says more about them than it does about the person whose grandmother cares about them. On that note, SpongeBob's grandma really does seem like such a sweet, traditional, loving, and accepting grandma. From the start of the episode to the end, all she did was be nothing but loving and supportive and respectful of the boundaries that SpongeBob thought that he wanted to lay down. I mean, she really does give off the vibes of cozy grandma that we all wish that we had. She honestly makes me miss my grandma. With that being said though, oh man, I need to acknowledge that SpongeBob's grandma really is a total savage. Like, she's an extremely wise old woman, and she isn't afraid to use that wisdom acquired over the years to her advantage in teaching a life lesson to her grandson. She saw SpongeBob acting the way that he was and could smell the BS from a mile away. Sure, she was respecting his boundaries, but it also felt like she was really cold and trying to make him see how ridiculous that he was being. I mean, come on. She was showering Patrick with extra love and affection. Meanwhile, SpongeBob got a big piece of steamed coral to crunch down on and some unwrapped office supplies as a gift. Perhaps the most savage of all, though, was her making him read a massive routine technical maintenance manual instead of getting to sit through the story that she was telling Patrick. The moment that she drops that massive book and it just falls enough to nearly cause an earthquake was just pure comedic genius. This little old lady just pulling out an offensively huge book out of nowhere, as if SpongeBob would even have the time to gain anything useful from this, just had me dying. Of course, the final blow though, leaving the comedy aside, was her telling SpongeBob to leave without even saying a proper goodbye to him. Like, this right here was the biggest example of that savage wisdom at play. She knew good and well that since he hadn't cracked from anything else, this was kind of like the final blow, so to speak. This was her putting the final nail in the coffin, knowing that it would cause SpongeBob to finally stop acting like this was actually what he wanted. And boy, did it work. I mean, that ridiculous crying cycle where he's going from rolling around to crying into his own mouth to going back and forth like a sprinkler, then eventually just like flooding the entire house with his tears. This right here was just SpongeBob letting out everything that he's been holding on to in the most hilarious way. It's that over-the-top, non-stop, progressively more absurd crying, combined with the fact that his grandma's just sitting there like, what's even going on right now? It's a perfect example of how the situational comedy was getting a lot more advanced than it was in the last season. Outside of the situational comedy, though, this one was chock full of just completely out-of-pocket moments that would prove just how much this season stands out from the rest. Like, a mix of really random and weird moments, but like, there's at least one string that attaches those moments to the story in a way that makes sense. A good example of this would be the moment where Patrick starts telling SpongeBob about how to become an adult, making him puff out his chest, saying the words tax exemption, and acquiring a taste for freeform jazz. Like, this really is one of the greatest underrated moments of this season. It's like they took the random humor that was really popular at the time and ramped it up slightly in a really small way. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were still moments this season where random things would happen with little to no relevance or explanation. But when random things happen like this that at least kind of make sense, it makes the joke land a million times better in my opinion, because at least your brain can connect the dots as to why that funny thing is happening. It increases the value of a joke when it's not just like a joke for the sake of a joke, but actually a joke that only mildly relates to the topic at hand. Not too much though, only mildly, for comedic effect. On the note of Patrick, we have to touch on the irony of him being the one to lead by example and pretty much act like he's gonna pave the path for SpongeBob to set some boundaries with his grandmother, just for him to basically swoop in and take SpongeBob's place. This right here might just be the most Patrick moment of season 2. It's like they took his confidence in Tea at the Tree Dome from season 1 and decided to twist it and mangle it into the most offensively ironic story that they could muster up. One of the funniest parts of it is the fact that we both know good and well that it isn't necessarily on purpose. Patrick didn't turn SpongeBob away from his grandmother's love just to intentionally take his spot. He just saw the allure of being her grandson and absolutely couldn't resist. Which, in turn, kind of made him come across as a massive jerk, unintentionally. On that note, we really need to consider how bad that things got for poor SpongeBob, too. It certainly was painful for him to have to just sit by and watch the guy who told him to stop letting his grandma show him affection receive that affection from her instead. Of course, accountability where it's due, SpongeBob was the one who set the boundary and stuck to it. His grandma was just respecting that boundary, but seriously, Patrick really is the big issue here. This episode genuinely does an amazing job of putting his accidental hyperbolized hypocrisy on full display, and it's genuinely laugh-worthy when you get past how sad that all of this was for poor SpongeBob. Sticking with that comedic aspect for a moment though, I can't get past SpongeBob's sideburns that he's been growing for years now. First of all, the fact that he has 2 sets of them. why does he need more than one? And second of all, where has he been growing these? How? He doesn't have hair. There's just way too many questions. On top of all that, though, we have to take a second to acknowledge just how kind of dumb these two look with sideburns. Like, they're intended to portray a sense of maturity and adulthood, but they just kind of look like a couple of idiots. Yet again, though, just another comedic gem to throw on the pile. Naturally, of all things to separate the boys from the men, of course it's sideburns. Oddly enough, though, one thing that I found myself kind of surprised at how funny it is in hindsight would be the ending where SpongeBob asks his grandma not to mention this to the guys at the Krusty Krab. As if she talks to those people or has any contact with them whatsoever, just for them to be outside of the window watching the entire time. This right here was just astronomically predictable. But what shocked me about it is the fact that even in its predictability, it still genuinely lands pretty well. This is the kind of thing that you can see coming from a mile away as soon as SpongeBob asks her that question, but it's one of those where even though you see it coming, that doesn't necessarily kill the comedic effect that it has. It's still a funny, albeit predictable moment, and I genuinely appreciate that. There's a fine line between predictability and annoyingly beating a dead horse. And I honestly feel like, especially at this point in the series, they walked that line incredibly well. If there were anything else completely random that I'd like to bring up as we make our way toward the next episode, though, it would be that moment where SpongeBob walked into the Krusty Krab with his grandma's lipstick on his forehead. At this moment, I had the huge realization that there's this one specific side character fish that I absolutely hate. And that would be this guy right here. Specifically, it would be the tone of voice, his general mocking nature, and the angry, unibrowed look on his face.
Oh, brother.
The sound of his voice alone is admittedly pretty aggravating for me. I just genuinely don't like this fish, and it's taken me about 26 years of watching this show to just now realize it. Even with that being said, though, as annoying as that fish is, and as much as this episode was kind of bogged down by Patrick being a bit of a thorn in its side, it still was a really good one. It definitely isn't my favorite of the season, but all things considered, this one does deserve recognition for being a quality episode that's full of iconic moments. With that in mind, I'm going to give this one a really proud 8 out of 10, and we're going to dive right on ahead to the next one. Now, this next episode is one that I am super excited to jump into. It's an episode revolving around a certain way too relatable character that I've been contemplating dedicating an entire video to recently. We're looking at none other than the iconic episode known as Squidville. As this episode starts out, we see SpongeBob running down the block with a package, excited to show Patrick what he got in the mail. Just then, he crashes directly into Patrick, who also has a package to show off.
Patrick, look! I got mine! Oh! Ah! I'm sorry, Patrick. It's just for a second I thought...
Hey, you got the same reef blower as me! Tag, you're in!
The two play with their reef blowers, running around and laughing as they have a blast. Patrick ends up switching his to suck mode as he cleans all the lines and details off of SpongeBob's pineapple. Having seen how clean his house is now, SpongeBob decides that it's time for them to brighten up Squidward's day a bit. They suck the nose and one of the window eyes off of his Easter Island head before Squidward sticks his head out the other window, angry at them for messing with his property. When they say that they're just playing with their new reef blowers and having fun, Squidward starts mocking them even more.
How could playing with one of those oversized hair dryers possibly be fun?
Like this!
Chafed. All right, that's...
Let's do your house, Patrick.
Yeah!
Squidward, you're steaming.
Squidward angrily demands that they put his windows back, and it's only a few moments later that they set their reef blowers back to blow mode, hurling the pieces back at his house and causing the entire thing to just spontaneously combust. As the destroyed rubble of his house and all of his belongings rain from the sky above, Squidward calmly tells SpongeBob that this is the last straw. He says that he's going to move so far away that he'll be able to brag about it.
I would rather tear out my brainstem, carry it into the middle of the nearest four-way intersection, and skip rope with it, than go on living where I do now.
Is this the final straw? Do you want to move so far away that you can brag about it? Would you rather tear out your brainstem, walk out into the middle of the nearest four-way intersection, and skip rope with it, than continue living where you do now?
The guy on TV promises Squidward that all of his problems will go away if he just simply moves to Tentacle Acres. And just like that, we cut right over to the big golden gate to Squidward's new neighborhood. As the gates part, we see endless Easter Island heads as far as the eye can see, each with nearly identical squids outside.
Heaven at last.
I've seen more alert people in a retirement home.
Oh, which way to the living without a brain seminar? Don't be late.
I've heard better comebacks from a turkey sandwich. Get a life!
This place is better than I expected.
Squidward makes his way to his new house and shortly thereafter ends the day tucking himself in next to his clarinet. Just then, though, the phone rings as Squidward answers it to find none other than SpongeBob on the other end, begging him to come back and be their neighbor again. Squidward, however, yells at him, saying that he's never coming back. The next morning, he begins his new life, walking outside and taking in a deep breath of fresh air. He decides to take his bike today, going on a nice, peaceful ride. Shortly thereafter, noticing that he's not the only one of his neighbors who decided to do that today. He makes his way to the grocery store, excited to see if they have one of his favorite products.
Wow, they have it! Canned bread! This town is great! I would really be impressed if it had an interpretive dance academy! Yeah, it's even better in a group!
After that, as the sun begins to set, Squidward comes upon a clarinet trio as he excitedly helps himself to the stage to join them, completely ruining their performance. Just like that, though, we cut to the next day where we see the entire chain of events start all over right from the beginning. At that, we get a montage of Squidward essentially living Groundhog Day, as day in and day out, the same exact things happen over and over and over again.
I sorta don't feel like playing my clarinet today.
Later that afternoon, Squidward finds himself sitting on a park bench, regretting his decision to move here, lamenting the loss of his old life. Just then, though, he hears a reef blower going off, excitedly thinking that it's SpongeBob, but he's let down to see that it's just another identical squid finishing up his park maintenance. He sets the reef blower down with a back whenever sign, and Squidward decides to help himself to it.
Leaves. Just getting the leaves.
Squidward drags the reef blower to the bench and starts having fun blowing it up his shirt and blowing himself off of the bench with it. As he busts up laughing, though, he ends up disturbing the peace and quiet of the park.
Could you pipe down over there, iron lung? Hey, that's not funny.
Just then, another squid gets involved and they start mocking Squidward for playing with a reef blower, ironically using the same exact line that he used on SpongeBob earlier in the episode.
How could you possibly have fun with one of those oversized hair dryers?
Like this.
Ah! Give it back, please!
Squidward loses his mind and starts running around with the reef blower and messing with everybody that he could possibly find. As he does that, though, we cut to the front gates where SpongeBob and Patrick are approaching with an apology cake for Squidward, hoping that they can convince him to come home.
Hello, can I help you?
Can I get a large number 1 extra size?
But you just ate 3 orders of fried oyster skins.
I love fried oyster skins.
We're sorry, but your kind isn't allowed here. He's not leaving Orville. You got your nightstick ready? Fried oyster skins!
I guess we gotta order inside.
Elsewhere in Tentacle Acres, Squidward runs around with the reef blower, not caring too much that there's an angry mob in pursuit of him. He causes all sorts of havoc as he runs through the streets, even running past SpongeBob and Patrick at one point.
Hey, that looked like Squidward! That looked like Squidward also, in angry mob form.
Squidward keeps running until eventually he hits a dead end. The angry mob corners him, and as he prepares to defend himself, they simply and cordially pass him a letter, which is a long list of grievances that the community has with him. Squidward starts roasting the community and calling the entire place a grievance, but when they remind him that he doesn't have to live here, he happily says that he's getting out of here as soon as possible. Meanwhile, SpongeBob and Patrick comb through the crowd asking every single Squidward doppelganger here if they are Squidward.
Are you Squidward?
No.
Are you Squidward? That's okay, take your time.
Any one of these Squidwards could be the real Squidward, Patrick. Well, we know one thing. It sure isn't that guy.
You guys, this one is just such a ridiculously iconic episode, and I look back at this one just so dumbfounded at the amount of comedic gold here. But also kind of mind blown by the fact that this episode just made me realize something absolutely stunning that I completely missed for more than 25 years now. Before I get to that revelation though, we've got to take it from the top and work our way there. First of all, that title card. I mean, the art is beautiful, but that's not what I'm talking about. Specifically, the music that accompanies it. Now, this music is just hilariously ridiculous. It's like the theme song to some uppity 50s Betty Crocker dump cake meets an upright new construction gated community where every house is identical and none of the food even has like a minor hint of flavor. I mean, if we're being honest, they couldn't have picked better title card music to fit the overall vibe and feeling of Tentacle Acres. I'm not going to say it's awful, but I will say it fits rather well. Going on from there, I really want to bring up that moment in the very beginning where Patrick and SpongeBob both open their packages, and Patrick at first has a potted plant. Then a second later, SpongeBob looks again and he has a reef blower too. Like, am I just stupid, or does this make no sense? Can somebody explain this one to me? Because yet again, it has to be that random joke for the sake of a joke with little to no explanation, right? It's just kind of weird. But then again, it's supposed to be weird. I don't know. Maybe it's a me problem. Maybe I'm just trying a little too hard to understand what's happening here. On that note, it is kind of funny if I consider the fact that I question that gag. However, I found the gag moments later when Patrick used his reef blower to suck the details off of SpongeBob's house just absolutely hilarious and not worth questioning for a moment. I guess in my mind I kind of rationalize it by seeing it from an animation and art standpoint. It's funny from that point of view, and in that way, I understand it and it feels a lot less random. But like from a normal viewer standpoint, just consuming the show, I'll totally admit that it does kind of seem like yet another random gag for the sake of a random gag. And it has even me questioning where the line is in my mind that separates a random gag from a well thought out joke. Not that that's something that knocks the quality of this episode by any means, but like nearly everything here made sense except for the setup of them getting reef blowers in the mail. With all of that in mind though, I definitely want to bring up early on that I appreciate this one for the Squidward centered episode that it is. This is an early one that genuinely gave me a lot of appreciation for him because it wasn't all being him a huge jerk for no reason or just being spiteful. This one gave Squidward a bigger driving force as a character other than just being some sort of antagonistic jerk. I see this as kind of the point where they started to make Squidward a little more relatable in his misery. I mean, previously, especially in season 1, he was always the butt of the joke or just miserable because of everything that happens to him. This point though was kind of when his misery started to shine through as more of being about his situation and everyday life. That subtle change was enough to really make him resonate with a lot of people, especially people who work customer-facing jobs like he does. Or, in the case of this one, people who have neighbors with frustrating tendencies. Like, sure, we've all had an annoying neighbor, the neighbor who blasts music or yells a lot, the neighbor who's just, like, generally inconsiderate or, like, way too friendly to the point that it comes across as nosy. For Squidward, though, for the sake of comedic value, they take those kinds of situations that everyday people are used to and they crank them up to 6 billion. For Squidward, it's his neighbors both getting reef blowers on the same exact morning and using them to straight up blow up his house. Because of course they do. Come on, it's Squidward we're talking about. His life can just never be easy for once. Moving along from there, I need to bring up the fact that Tentacle Acres is kinda creepy. Like, this is a gated community full of a bunch of people who look exactly the same, living in identical houses, doing the same exact thing down to a T every single day. All holding nearly the same exact opinions, never going against the grain or doing anything that preaches individuality. As a concept, it's just really uncanny and creepy. It's like the SpongeBob equivalent of an episode of The Twilight Zone or something like that. Even with that being said though, I absolutely loved the voices of all the different Squidwards here. It's kind of hilarious to notice how many of these just sound like different voice actors pinching their noses while talking to make it kind of have a mock Squidward-ass effect.
I've seen more alert people in a retirement home.
Hey, that's not funny.
Yeah. What's going on over here?
It's that guy. He's playing with a reef blower.
Playing with a reef blower?
Honestly, another reason that this episode is absolute gold is because throughout the first season, it felt like Squidward never really got a time to shine comedically. Sure, he would act as the punchline, but it kind of felt like missed potential that we didn't really get like a truly funny Squidward-centered episode. This one, though, felt kind of like a breath of fresh air because it really gave him time to step into the light, so to speak. Perhaps the greatest moment had to have been when he gets the reef blower in the park and starts messing with everyone. Particularly, there's the instance where he hides in a cafe stand and ends up surprising a couple of people, removing their faces with the reef blower and putting them back on all jacked up. And it's so funny. Or there's the overall hilarious fact that Squidward didn't even last more than a week here before going completely bonkers and deciding that his perfect life really just wasn't for him. It's hysterical considering that we've seen Squidward hoping to get out of his neighborhood for ages now. Like, he even tried selling his house in the first season. Yet, when he finally gets to experience his own personal paradise firsthand, he realizes just how bland and flavorless that it is. He realizes that he's miserable living this life surrounded constantly by people who are exactly like him. With that in mind though, I really loved how they played on that in gags as it pertains to SpongeBob and Patrick. They get to this community of Squidwards and like every single squid that they see might as well be Squidward. I particularly always get a good gut-busting laugh when Squidward runs past SpongeBob and Patrick being chased, and SpongeBob says that looks like Squidward in angry mob form. Even when I was a kid, this line always destroyed me. It's just so good. I also loved the part at the end when SpongeBob and Patrick approach Tentacle Acres and Patrick is automatically trying to order food at the speaker. Like, SpongeBob couldn't even get in a single word and Patrick has already lost sight of their mission and completely forgot what they're doing here. Then, of course, there's the part where the self-righteous squid at the gate says, "Your kind aren't welcome here," as he's preparing to send another guy out with a nightstick. All of this is even more hilarious because in my research, I've just connected some massive dots about Squidward that I'm surprised to have never connected before. I came upon a personal revelation that kind of changed the entire way that I view this show, even as far back as the first episode of Season 1. The thing is, you guys, Squidward isn't even a squid. He's an octopus. Steven Hillenburg himself even confirmed that Squidward is an anthropomorphic cartoon octopus. With that being said, octopuses aren't usually social creatures. Most of them are typically solitary, and even on familial levels, usually by the time an octopus hatches from its egg, the mother has passed away or is actively passing away from exhaustion and starvation from just sitting there guarding the eggs. Now, when we keep that in mind, the entire premise of there being a community of octopuses who only live among themselves and exclude all other creatures, especially a school this large, it's just completely unrealistic. With that being said, that's kind of an extra layer of marine knowledge that makes this episode a lot funnier. It's one of those where if you know, you know, and up until this point, I most certainly did not know. I'm no marine biologist, so I had no clue that this was likely just a big, ironic joke from the show's creator's standpoint. I just thought this was like a bunch of asshole squids who cared too much about keeping people out of their society that runs on canned bread and ear-piercing clarinet trios. With all of that in mind, though, from the first random gag to the last bit of Squidward flying off in the distance, I have to give this one a very fitting 9.5. It's not perfect, but it's full of just enough hilarious gags to get pretty close. Now, moving along, we're going to check out an episode that I have so many mixed opinions on. This one is kind of a massive roller coaster of ups and downs, some of which are full-blown 90-degree angles. Of course, we're talking about none other than Pre-hibernation week. As this episode starts out, we see Sandy in her tree dome doing some yard work, raking up the leaves into a pile in the shape of the state of Texas. Just then, she goes to check on SpongeBob, who's supposed to be helping her, but she's none too pleased with his progress as he sits there failing to rake up the leaves with the world's smallest rake. At that, she shoos him off to go scrape the salt lick while she finishes this up, saying that she doesn't have time for his shenanigans.
I told you, SpongeBob, I'm hibernating next week.
Hibernating? What's that?
It's when I go to sleep for the whole winter.
Can I do that?
No, silly. It's a mammalian thing.
Sandy, you may not have noticed, but I is 100% mammal.
From there, Sandy pulls down a calendar saying that they only have 1 week until she has to go into hibernation. She begins to panic at the thought of how much she needs to get done in such a short amount of time. But thankfully, SpongeBob says that he's willing to promise any of his time that he hasn't already promised to Mr. Krabs to her.
Well, I'm glad, SpongeBob, because for the next 7 days, it's gonna be you, me, and these sweatbands. Yee-haw!
Sandy rips down the mountain at high speed, catching fire from the velocity. As she catches some massive air, SpongeBob, still at the top of the mountain, tosses his board and decides to go down on his tongue instead. He rips down the mountain, having a blast and hitting some tricks along the way.
Maybe if we sing that song, he'll come to life. Ready?
Oh, there once was a Tin Man.
Life's as extreme as you wanna make it!
Maybe we didn't sing it right.
Yeah.
We cut to later that evening, where outside of the tree dome, Sandy is thanking SpongeBob for helping make this the greatest pre-hibernation week ever. She says that she's actually pretty impressed with how great he's done at keeping up with her. At that, SpongeBob says that he's gotta get home to feed Gary, and in his exhaustion, he ends up having to physically pick up his legs with his hands just to be able to take steps. Sometime later, he's finally dragged himself to his room, and as soon as he lays in bed, Sandy clicks a button on a remote, sending SpongeBob launching out of his bed and through the night sky.
Nothing like a refreshing morning dip, huh, SpongeBob?
What happened to sleeping?
Well, I'll be asleep all winter. We only got 3 days for fun. Well, hurry now. The giant clams like to feed at this hour.
As the day progresses, we see SpongeBob and Sandy battling with giant ear cleaners on top of the Space Needle until one of them falls off, playing extreme jacks using bowling balls, and eventually going on a nice, relaxing tandem bicycle ride through the park.
The industrial park. This is where the real action is. Come on, pedal. This park is pretty technical. Yee-haw! Now for the speed course. Hope we make it. I'm having fun too.
As SpongeBob sits there, a melted pile of goo on the ground, Sandy tells him to get up as she tosses him a fishing rod, telling him that they're going fly fishing as she stands next to an airplane. However, SpongeBob makes the decision that this has just gone too far and that he needs to stand up for himself for the sake of his own preservation. He attempts to tell Sandy that he needs a break for a while, however, before he can get it out, she covers his mouth, telling him to hold that thought as she says that it's time for an old Texas favorite. Find the hay in the needle stack. Just like that, we see SpongeBob traversing through a massive pile of needles as if he were in Saw 2, searching for a literal tiny piece of hay with Sandy. Eventually, he ends up digging his way out of the pile and escaping right as she finds the hay, telling him that they're gonna play best 2 out of 3.
You gotta hide! Home? No, Gary can't keep a secret. Under a rock! It's so original! Bye.
Where are you, little square dude? SpongeBob's tie and all his other little dressings. But he always folds his clothes before running around in the nude.
Sandy fears that something awful must have happened to SpongeBob. She heads right to the Krusty Krab and starts calling shots, saying that she's rounding up a search party. She commands one team to search uptown and the other to search downtown, and just like that, the whole city is plastering up search posters, checking every nook and cranny.
Come on! He could be anywhere in these sulfur fields.
Hey, SpongeBob!
Well, at least I still have my personality.
Haha, take that, jerk. As the search continues, Sandy makes the fish search more and more dangerous places, such as the Poison Sea Urchin Cove and the Leech Farm. When SpongeBob is nowhere to be found, though, Sandy decides that it's time for them to triple their efforts.
This is a load of barnacles.
I heard that! No one's going anywhere till we find SpongeBob.
Wait. Here he is.
That ain't SpongeBob. SpongeBob is square.
I'm ready.
No, you ain't.
I found SquareBob.
That's just a cereal box. Besides, he's yellow.
Yeah, here he is. Hey, can I go home now?
Just then, one of the fish distracts Sandy, saying that SpongeBob's up in the sky, and while she's looking away, every single one of them disappears. leaving her alone up in her search tower. She assumes that they've all gone to search some more, but it turns out that they're all just hiding under Patrick's rock. Sandy herself runs around town literally ripping buildings out of the ground in search of SpongeBob. However, with each building ripped up, the longer she goes without finding SpongeBob, the more she panics.
That squirrel's gone crazy.
But she'll never look under a rock.
Ah! You said it. Sandy'll never find us. Hey, wait! You don't understand.
Oh, look, it is I, SpongeBob, out here in the open.
SpongeBob?
As SpongeBob begs to be let back in, Sandy grabs him and nearly squeezes the life out of him, saying that he's just in time to go atom smashing. She tries to drag him away, insisting that they're nearly out of time, but SpongeBob refuses, demanding that she make time to hear him out because this is important.
I am a man. Okay, Sandy, I can't play with you anymore. I just can't take the games. They're tearing me apart.
Tears stream down SpongeBob's face as he cries his eyes out, groveling at Sandy's feet and begging for her to still be his friend. Thankfully, though, he's surprised when he looks up and sees that Sandy is completely passed out, not even aware of anything that he's saying.
I never thought I'd say it, but thank Neptune for hibernation. Ah!
Who are you people?
Oh man, this one, again, like I said, really does have me feeling mixed. Honestly, I feel kind of obligated to love this episode for a few reasons. First of all, I absolutely love metal music, and there's a lot of that in this episode. And secondly, I've always been into BMX, skating, and extreme sports in general. This is kind of in line with that. I feel like I should like this one, and I guess it's not that I don't like it. It's a good episode. However, the parts that I feel obligated to like by default, I am kind of not the biggest fan of. For example, that damn Pantera riff that was just on repeat throughout this entire episode. I mean, I'll admit that it did fit the vibe of what was happening, but I'm just not into Pantera, dude. The whole Confederate flag, beer-chugging, redneck vibe is just kind of cringe in my opinion. Plus, the singer portrays himself publicly as just such a total brazen jerk. I'll respect the musicianship of Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul, rest in peace, but man, I gotta admit it's just never been my cup of tea. If I wanted to listen to some generic metal in that vein, I'd put on some like Lamb of God or Slayer or something like that. But with that being said, what do I know? If I had my choice, I would have gone with the riffs from Hammer Smashed Face by Cannibal Corpse for this episode. Now, that's heavy. But with that being said, I was like 6 years old when this aired, so, what are you gonna do? In all seriousness though, kind of expanding just a tiny bit more on that though, the extreme sports aspect was cool. I do dig the whole bike ride through the industrial park aspect. However, a lot of this was bogged down by Sandy's overwhelming demeanor. That's not to say that Sandy's demeanor was all bad, and really again I can't emphasize how much of a mixed bag of roller coaster emotions that this one comes along with in general for me. But like, it did get a bit exhausting just to see how pushy and non-stop over the top that she was. Like, even when she realized that SpongeBob clearly wasn't enjoying what they were doing, she didn't care and wanted to push it even further. Even with that in mind though, completely 180ing that point right on its stupid head in an effort to chew gum and walk at the same time, all the ridiculous things that Sandy had SpongeBob doing here actually did make for some pretty decent character development in regards to her. As draining as I'll admit that her persistence was, this did make for a great Sandy episode because it truly felt like stepping away from the Sandy that we knew from season 1. The Sandy who was mostly science focused and more often was kind of calm in demeanor. Like, if we compare Sandy and SpongeBob first meeting, Sandy standing around the punch bowl with Squidward at the Halloween party, and the Sandy from Sandy's Rocket, to this Sandy from Season 2, you have to admit that in just this episode alone, they kind of took a massive leap with her character. Again, though, that's not immediately a bad thing. Her being less science-focused and having a bit more developed character is something that would absolutely give her room to shine in a lot of ways that she couldn't have previously. Honestly, I feel like Season 2 in general has a lot of moments reflective of that, but this episode in particular was a great example of that sentiment. Outside of Sandy, the annoying aspects of her approach, and the soundtrack that drove me a little nuts, this is genuinely an excellent episode with a lot of really golden comedic bits. It's honestly got a few really solid iconic moments that were burned into many of our brains for years to come. One big one for me was the moment where Sandy is shredding down the mountain and SpongeBob follows suit by tossing his board and instead going down the mountain on his tongue. Like, this became such an iconic moment that it worked its way into multiple SpongeBob video games as like a regularly occurring mechanic at this point. Most SpongeBob games after, I think, maybe Battle for Bikini Bottom utilize this mechanic, and that right there is a testament to the magical synergy between creative forces behind game design and creative teams behind the source material in the early 2000s. They absolutely do not make tie-in video games like they used to back in the day. Back then, shows like Rugrats and SpongeBob had fantastic tie-in games that would often utilize the show for inspiration on mechanics and levels that they would pull off in a way that never really felt gimmicky, which in and of itself feels like kind of a lost art form of the days of yore. Moving on from there and kind of expanding on the enjoyable moments from this episode, there were some that would go down in the SpongeBob Hall of Fame as some of the most memorable. For example, this right here.
I can explain.
That moment right there for me was one of the absolute highlights of this one. Just the timing of it all and the fact that Sandy would yet again expose this guy later in his own home is just so funny to me. Plus, we have that moment where SpongeBob hits that massive jump on the mountain just to come crashing down, causing his leg bones to straight up crunch into his body cavity and out of the top of his head. I mean, the visual of this and the crunching noise that accompanied it were just gnarly. It almost felt like a moment pulled straight out of Ren and Stimpy's playbook. In a bit of a different direction, though, I got a real kick out of the moment where Sandy finds SpongeBob's clothes and talks about him running around in the nude. But like, the only thing out of the norm to her was the fact that he didn't fold his clothes neatly. I mean, just the realization alone that everyone acknowledges that him running around naked is this normal occurrence in Bikini Bottom is something else entirely. But the fact that it's when he's not courteous enough to clean up his clothes first, that's when we worry. That's the moment where we feel like something's wrong with him, right? I mean, it's just so backwards in the most hysterical way, and I absolutely love it. Aside from that, though, I'd be remiss to bring up the fact that this episode is the source of the iconic quote,
"This is a load of barnacles."
Honestly, I couldn't even count how many times in my life that this moment has been completely applicable, and living in a day and age where someone could just drop this screenshot in a chat somewhere and you'll know exactly what they're saying, it genuinely makes this moment stand out as a huge highlight of the episode. Considering the fact that this was the lone comment that kind of sparked a chain reaction of a bunch of snarky people standing up to Sandy and eventually eluding her, it feels like a moment that's resulted in a meme that's not only hilarious and relevant, but also kind of holds some power to spark a change in an interesting way. If there's anything else that I want to bring up about this episode, it would be that hilarious moment in the end where SpongeBob finally works up the courage to tell Sandy the truth. I mean, After having his body destroyed, playing Find the Hay in the Needle Stack, and just so many more obscene, torturous games, the moment comes to speak out. And to hype himself up, he pulls out a little razor and says that he's a man. Like, the way that he hypes this entire moment up so severely, and even goes as far as ripping his own nose off, just for her to be asleep and have no idea that this is even happening. It genuinely made for a solid ending that had a good payoff with quite a few laughs along the way. On that note, I have a hard time giving this one a score. I don't want to put my personal bias against the quality of this episode because I totally recognize that just because I don't enjoy Pantera doesn't mean that this episode is bad. So I guess, all things considered, I'll give this one another 8. It's not bad by any means, but it's not the best episode of the bunch that we're checking out today. Now, this next episode that we're diving into is one that I absolutely love for a few different reasons. It's a classic, and it's just bursting with non-stop irony. We're talking about none other than Life of Crime. As this episode starts out, we see an old black and white crime show where the thief gets caught by the police and thrown in jail for his crimes. The TV zooms out and we see Mr. Krabs sitting at a table in the Krusty Krab reacting to the show, talking about how people who steal should be strung up by their gills and forced to breathe air.
But Mr. Krabs, what about all the stuff you stole?
What do you mean?
Like that barrel. It says property of Salty Sea Farms.
Oh, that's where I rent me pickles from. What about this towel from the Sizzling Spring Sauna?
And this Bikini Bell phone.
Well, it's... And Sandy's hedge clippers? Oh, they're,
And Plankton's lawnmower.
Well, he did...
Even Mrs. Puff's hair curlers.
That one was a gift.
Mr. Krabs does his best to defuse the situation by saying that all of those things were borrowed and that everyone knows that it's okay to borrow whatever you want from whoever you want without asking as long as you have it back before it's missed. With the boys and him on the same page, he gives them both a big hug and pushes them out of the Krusty Krab, telling them to take the rest of the day off, letting out a sigh of relief that he gets to keep the hair curlers for now. Meanwhile, over at the park...
What do you want to do today?
I don't know. What do you want to do today?
I don't know. What do you want to do today?
I don't know. What do you want to do today?
I know what I want to do today.
Completely enamored by the allure of the balloons, Patrick checks his pockets and his belly button, only to be let down by the fact that he has no money. He begs SpongeBob to give him some money so that he can buy a balloon, saying that he wants one really, really badly. SpongeBob takes him to what he calls the First International Bank of SpongeBob, but sadly, the pot at the end of the rainbow is completely empty, leaving them both feeling defeated. SpongeBob thinks maybe they can ask Squidward to borrow some money. However, Patrick, for once, actually has a decent idea. He suggests that they just borrow the balloon like Mr. Krabs instead of borrowing the money.
This is so great!
We're gonna have so much fun!
As the two friends stand there listing all of the different amazing things that they're gonna do with the balloon, such as going to the beach or going on a bike ride, out of nowhere, the balloon just kind of explodes right before their very eyes.
How are we gonna return it now, SpongeBob?
I've got the pieces!
I found the air!
Hurry, put the pieces on! We popped the balloon! We're thieves! We have to confess!
Confess? Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what they do to people like us? We're not talking about some dumb mail fraud scheme or hijacking here. We stole a balloon!
As the two panic, fearing that they'll be locked up forever, they attempt to act normal. Unfortunately, though, them acting normal causes a crowd to gather, thinking that they're street performers.
It's not working! going!
Hi there. Hey! Don't you want a free balloon? It's National Free Balloon Day.
He's on to us!
It's not safe in Bikini Bottom anymore. We've got to move fast and cover our tracks.
I'm on it, SpongeBob!
Later that evening at sunset, the two friends stand on the cliffs overlooking Bikini Bottom, saying one last goodbye to the city that they can never come back to. As time passes, we see them with a fire set up as they camp around it, mourning the loss of their old lives.
We're wanted men. We'll spend the rest of our lives running. But at least it's warm around the fire.
Hey, if we're underwater, how could there be a... I'm scared, SpongeBob.
The two start to cry their eyes out as they think about all the important things and people that they had to leave behind in Bikini Bottom, like all of their friends and their homes. However, SpongeBob remembers to look on the bright side, thankful that they at least have one another to lean on.
And the bitter cold? It's bracing, isn't it?
Yeah! Maybe being a felon could be fun! We can loosen our ties!
Yeah! And we can fly!
Yeah! Okay, we still can't do that.
At that, the two share a big hug, again thankful to have one another, and as they both sit back hungry, SpongeBob pulls out some candy bars for the two of them to snack on. He passes Patrick his candy bar, saying that all they have to do is just make them last the rest of their lives.
Thanks, SpongeBob. I think I'll eat it now. I think I'll eat it now. Ow! Oh. Where'd my candy bar go? Oh, I must have dropped it.
SpongeBob tries to explain to Patrick that he already ate his candy bar and that it's all over his face. However, when Patrick looks at SpongeBob and sees him holding a candy bar, he assumes that SpongeBob stole his, just like he stole the balloon.
You took my only food! Now I'm gonna starve!
Here, Patrick, just take half of mine.
Yours? You mean mine?
Do you want it or what?
I don't want it unless you admit you took it.
This is my candy bar.
Liar, liar, plants for hire.
When SpongeBob refuses to admit that he took it because he didn't, he says that he'll just eat it himself if Patrick's gonna be like that. He slowly unwraps the candy bar, licking it, scraping his teeth on it, and passing it back and forth through the holes in his body in an effort to tease Patrick before he full-blown swallows the whole thing in one gulp. Patrick goes absolutely insane, losing it on SpongeBob.
You're a crazy person! I should have expected this after the way you stole that balloon!
Did I, Patrick? Did I? Or did your criminal mind hypnotize me to steal it?
That's it! No! First the balloon, now my candy bar! You're out of control! I'm telling on you.
Not if I tell on you first!
The two friends both sprint to the police station, and when they get inside, they both run up to the front desk, each attempting to accuse the other of stealing the balloon. By the end, though, they both end up in tears, admitting that each of them played a hand in the theft.
Okay, follow me. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Okay, time's up. Now get out.
But we stole a balloon.
Yeah, on Free Balloon Day.
As the episode comes to an end, we see SpongeBob and Patrick being guided out of the jail by the policemen as they offer the two of them some lollipops for the road. The two happily accept as they both vow to never take anything without permission again.
All right, which one of you flatfoot stole my lollipop?
Oh, brother.
I mean it.
Now, this episode is just such an amazing one. But the only problem I have with it is the fact that I always get it confused with another one. I see the title Life of Crime, and for some reason I always get it mixed up with the episode The Smoking Peanut. The one where Patrick gets framed for throwing a peanut at a clam at the zoo. That one is also in season 2, and we'll be checking it out in a video here soon. But I think I get them mixed up because this one sees SpongeBob and Patrick borrowing a balloon on Free Balloon Day after taking Mr. Krabs' advice. Meanwhile, the latter takes place on Free Day at the Bikini Bottom Zoo, and it also involves Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob, and Patrick in a story about crime. The two episodes actually have a surprising amount of similarities despite being completely different premise-wise in nearly every conceivable way. Speaking of Mr. Krabs though, and kind of taking it from the top, I love the irony in him being such a staunch believer in extreme punishment for everybody but himself. He full-blown said the character in the show that he was watching deserved to be locked up forever and pretty much tortured. Meanwhile, he himself is actually guilty of stealing from a bunch of people that he knows personally. With that in mind too, all of those random items that he borrowed from all those other characters were actually really funny. I love that Plankton has a little tiny lawnmower. That's actually pretty hilarious. With that in mind though, I'm oddly confused as to what Mr. Krabs could have possibly been borrowing it from him for. I'm not sure if I really want the answer to that question. On that same note, I'm just now realizing that Mr. Krabs doesn't have hair to use Mrs. Puff's hair curlers on, and I'm kind of concerned with what he could possibly be using them for. Moving right on along though, I think the true beauty of this episode, and the thing that I love the most about it, is the fact that it's practically iconic moment after iconic moment. This one just has so many, from the small gags to the big story bits, and honestly, it's almost hard to list all of them. One of my all-time favorites, though, without a doubt, is the iconic, "What do you want to do today?" and "I don't know, what do you want to do today?" Now, this right here is just such a huge defining moment for me as a person. I remember quoting this back and forth with my friends all the time when I was a little kid, and just thinking that this was the funniest thing ever. Speaking of that though, that kind of is the beauty of this show. There are a ton of moments that are overall cultural memes that most people can recognize. Then there's the moments that end up inevitably being personal inside jokes with your friends or family when you're a kid. This right here was certainly one of those for me. Everything down to the obnoxious walk cycle that's going on while they're repeatedly throwing that same question back and forth. It's just such pure comedy that holds up genuinely so well even more than 20 years later. Another purely iconic moment is that point where Patrick asks to borrow money from SpongeBob, and he takes him to the First International Bank of SpongeBob. Like, for me, this has always been so explosively funny, because SpongeBob throws out this rainbow and it just comes across as this big, exciting, and mystical moment, only for it to be this huge letdown that they both just kind of walk away from like nothing even happened. It's overall just so hysterically anticlimactic, and it's a gag that really does fit the tone of this episode perfectly. This one is overall admittedly pointless too. Like, by the end, SpongeBob and Patrick pretty much find themselves in the same spot that they were in at the beginning. There's this big journey all hilariously for nothing. Just like SpongeBob going through this grand gesture of whipping out the rainbow and taking a ride on it, only to hilariously come up empty-handed. It's genuinely kind of funny and impressive to take in that this is kind of the entire basis of the episode. The writers pretty much wrote an episode where nothing really substantial happens, but it's still non-stop ironic gags that genuinely still make for an excellent episode. For me personally, another moment that really makes this episode shine is the point where Patrick is completely overreacting and telling SpongeBob that they're going to be locked up forever. At which point he screams at the top of his lungs on a busy city street that they stole a balloon. And like, nobody even acknowledges that it happened. Nobody even reacts, not even SpongeBob, the person that he's talking to. It's almost like this is just a normal part of Patrick's sentence, and in a way, that lack of reaction to him openly screaming the crime that they think they committed was just so much more laugh-worthy than any reaction that SpongeBob could have had to it. All things considered, it really is the small gags in this one, if we're being honest. It's like this episode, because there isn't all too much going on story-wise, acts as kind of an open springboard for non-stop gag after gag. Like the moment where they're looking on the bright side and Patrick suggests that they can fly, causing SpongeBob to leap off the cliff nearby. Or the moment where they're running away and Patrick is painting over their footprints with red paint in an effort to cover their tracks. Like, this one is just non-stop stupid jokes in your face, but they're all genuinely funny and the platform works for just being a vessel for nonsense humor. I mean, come on, you're gonna tell me that you didn't laugh when SpongeBob excitedly pulls out the candy bars and this happens?
Look what I've got!
Rectangles!
Not just any rectangles, candy bars!
Now, I gotta say, I really do appreciate the whole candy bar aspect of this episode. It was genuinely just so funny. Not only that gag, but also the moment where SpongeBob is teasing Patrick with the candy bar after Patrick forgot that he ate his own. He accuses SpongeBob of having stolen it, so in response, SpongeBob full-blown ends up fondling the candy bar and pretty much violating it in a way that just had me nearly crying while I was watching this. It's just so over the top and so unnecessary that it's genuinely gut-busting. The most ridiculous part of all, though, had to have been the ending. The fact that Patrick never seems to learn anything whatsoever, and that he just keeps making the same mistake of accusing people over and over again because not a single person seems to be able to get through to him. Now, I gotta admit, this is funny, but I also have to acknowledge that though it does feel a bit too early to call it that, it kind of comes across as an indicator that this is about the point where the beginning phases of making Patrick a completely helpless character who has the mental capacity of an infant had started. I mean, if you compare Patrick from the boating school episode in season 1 as he gives SpongeBob accurate tips on passing his boating school exam to this season 2 Patrick, it's clear that, much like Sandy, they started progressing his character in a bit of a different direction. In Patrick's case, though, it wouldn't necessarily be all for the best. I will admit that it was pretty welcomed at first when I was a kid, but knowing where his character would end up over time, I honestly just wish that this didn't have to be the case. I like Patrick being an idiot, don't get me wrong, but when he turns into a helpless idiot who can't even process reality, that's where we start getting into modern SpongeBob territory fall down just a little bit. Early on, there's just something about Patrick's false confidence that comes across as really hilarious. But eventually, that false confidence goes away and was replaced with absolute helplessness. Again, this was probably a little too early to be considered foreshadowing, but to a degree, it was the beginnings of what a lot of people would see as the downfall of Patrick as a character. Even with that in mind, though, this is still an excellent episode. I mean, again, it takes a lot of creativity to take a nothing burger like this and turn it into an actual interesting 11 minutes that can keep your attention. Processing every piece of that, keeping it all in mind, I honestly think this one's a solid 9. It flies kinda close to perfect, and it's absolutely great for all that it's worth, and it's one that I genuinely enjoy. Now, this last episode that we're going to check out though, this is one that I've been looking forward to since starting this review. It feels like I may have accidentally saved the best for last in this video. Before I dive into it though, if you're still watching, thank you so much for being here. I genuinely appreciate you more than words could say. If you hear this, do me a solid and leave me a comment letting me know what your favorite episode that we covered in this video was and why. It helps me see who's actually seeing this to the end, and it helps me know who to look out for to give an extra thank you to. Also, just saying, normally if you watch this show on Paramount Plus, this is about the point where the Christmas special would be. However, it's the end of August right now. I'm going to push that episode off to later on in this review just for the sake of letting it drop closer to Christmas. And instead, we're diving into the absolutely phenomenal, iconic episode, Survival of the Idiots. As this episode starts out, we see SpongeBob and Patrick running like a couple of buffoons to Sandy's tree dome. When they get there, though, they're surprised to see the entire thing encased in metal and locked up. Of course, they ignore the keep out sign and instead they let themselves in.
Look, she's on the eating channel.
If y'all are watching this, that means I'm asleep for the winter. This sleep is called hibernation. During hibernation, animals don't like to be woken up, so do not disturb. That means you, SpongeBob.
At that, Patrick throws a water bowl on SpongeBob's head, telling him that no actually means yes, as he opens up the door, helping himself to Sandy's tree dome. The two friends are shocked when they look around inside and see snow falling from the sky, having clearly never seen it before.
What is this stuff?
It's a vast, swirling wonderland of sparkling white pleasure. Let it fill your senses with cascading, fluffy pillows of excitement and comfort as you've never felt before.
Wow, Patrick. That was beautiful.
What? I was just reading this candy wrapper, see?
All of a sudden, SpongeBob looks over shocked, seeing that Patrick took his helmet off, having realized that the stuff falling from the sky is frozen water. With that in mind, SpongeBob joins him in removing his helmet, and the two dive right on into the snow to play. After a few minutes, though, they're kind of caught off guard when they hear an odd noise coming from Sandy's tree.
SpongeBob, did you hear that?
I think it came from up in Sandy's tree.
That is one tired tree.
The two go to investigate, and they're taken back to peek inside and see a massive Sandy laying in her bed, just sawing logs and talking in her sleep.
I've had enough of your dastardly deeds, Dirty Dan. I'm gonna get you and your partner, Pinhead Larry, or my name ain't Sheriff Sandy.
She must be dreaming about Texas outlaws.
The two start talking to Sandy in her sleep, pretending to be Dirty Dan and messing with her, causing her to panic and fret even more. After a while, though, SpongeBob decides that he's had enough, saying that they shouldn't disturb her anymore.
That's not disturbing. This is disturbing. Hi there, SpongeBob. My name is Patback.
Ha! That is really disturbing.
SpongeBob?
They try to run away, but she catches them by their pants and holds them up in the air, telling them that they've crossed the border into Hurtville. They panic and try to plead with her, attempting to wake her up by telling her that they're her friends. But luckily for them, she just ends up falling back asleep while standing up and dropping them to the floor, allowing them to crawl back to safety. They start to brainstorm ideas of how to keep her from waking up and getting them again. But when Patrick pulls out his belly button lint that conveniently takes the shape of a pair of earmuffs, SpongeBob ends up crawling back over to Sandy and putting them on her.
That ought to work.
Hey, Sandy, does it work?
Hey, Sandy, if you can't hear us, don't say anything.
Hey, Sandy, don't wake up.
See you later, Sheriff Sandy.
The two walk away laughing as they decide to start a snowball fight with one another, playing Texas Outlaws.
All right, Pinhead, your time is up.
Who you calling Pinhead? I want to be Dirty Dan.
What makes you think you can be Dirty Dan?
I'm dirty. See it.
I'd say I'm Dirty Dan.
I'd say I'm Dirty Dan.
SpongeBob and Patrick keep bashing each other in the head and continuously claiming that they're each Dirty Dan, and eventually Sandy's earmuffs fall off as she wakes up to the sound of all the commotion outside. As the two friends continue to battle one another, it isn't long before Sandy makes her presence known.
Which one of you fellers is the real Dirty Dan?
I am?
Convinced that SpongeBob is Pinhead Larry, Sandy then turns her sights on him. He runs as fast as he can in an attempt to get away from her, but it's no use. He ends up cornered in a massive pit in the ground that Sandy knocked him into.
Now you're gonna pay for those crimes, Pinhead!
Sandy, stand back. I'm warning ya. Okay, I warned ya.
Did you win? Hi, SpongeBob.
Sandy jumps down and attacks SpongeBob and Patrick. Before you know it, we cut to later that night where the two are waking up from graves marked Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry. They run for the door in a panic, but sadly, no matter how hard SpongeBob tries, he's unable to get the door open due to it being frozen shut.
Let me have a try. Open sesame! Well, I've done all I can do.
Then we're stuck in here until the door thaws in spring.
As time passes, we see them both completely covered in snow and almost freezing to death. SpongeBob decides that he's going to start a fire using the bark on Sandy's tree, but as soon as he touches it, he hears Sheriff Sandy upstairs saying that he's going to be in an iron lung when she's done with him, causing him to put the bark back and tape it back into place. SpongeBob goes right back up to Patrick as the two brainstorm how it is that Sandy is able to tolerate these extreme conditions. They end up coming to the conclusion, though, that it has to be her fur, and just like that, they head upstairs and right into her room in hopes of getting some of her fur to warm up. SpongeBob ends up ever so carefully plucking one singular strand from Sandy as she roars extremely loud and nearly wakes up in response.
That should be enough, right?
Sponge, I'm a big man. A big, big man.
Well, I guess I've lived a full life.
This is taking too long. I want the worm now.
Pat, no!
SpongeBob panics at the fact that Sandy nearly woke up from that, but when he sees how warm and comfy that Patrick is, he tells him to hand the tape over. We hear Sandy roaring over and over again, and next thing you know, SpongeBob and Patrick are walking out, covered in her fur, feeling ready to take on a cold and brutal winter.
I'm ready for the longest, coldest winter ever.
Bring it on!
Spring?
Wow, spring already.
SpongeBob and Patrick sprint for the door in a panic, but karma hits them like a ton of bricks when they realize that the lock is the only thing in here that's still frozen solid. They try to thaw it by blowing their warm breath on it, but unfortunately for them, Sandy catches sight of them from up in her tree. She comes on down to say hi, kind of confused by the sight. SpongeBob tries his best to talk his way out of it, but Sandy's explosive anger is no match for any amount of explanation that he could ever offer. At that exact moment, we cut to the end of the episode where we see Sandy sitting at her picnic table enjoying a nice glass of lemonade while wearing both SpongeBob and Patrick in place of her fur. Now, I could sing so much praise for this episode, and in a way that almost makes it harder to give an analysis on. It's just kind of a perfect episode. In my opinion, of the 5 that we've checked out today, this one is definitely the winner of the bunch. And that says a lot because they were all really good. This episode is one that has spawned some of my all-time favorite SpongeBob memes, and it's one that in all honesty can live rent-free in my head, and I am not mad about it for even a second. Everything about this one is just so hilarious and perfectly timed in my opinion. No joke overstayed its welcome, and it's had that perfect formula to balance out story progression and laughs. One thing I truly found interesting though is how, like all of 3 episodes ago, Sandy was talking to SpongeBob about hibernation, and here we are yet again nearly in the blink of an eye doing the same thing again. Honestly, I think that there potentially could have been a bit of benefit in attaching this one to that episode. Like if Pre-hibernation week had played prior to this one, I feel like it would have been the perfect setup to transition into this episode. However, the big glaring and obvious issue with that would be the fact that doing so would kind of come with the implication that there's some sort of continuing story present in this show, which very much so is not the case. They absolutely wouldn't want to give their fans that impression for even a moment, so with that in mind, I guess having these 2 separated far apart does make sense. Even then, it is interesting to take in the parallels that led us to think that in the first place. Stepping outside of that box though, I feel like one huge winning factor of this episode is the Sandy quotes. I mean, she spent literally the entire episode sleeping, and even then, her dialogue was the absolute funniest thing in this whole episode. Of course, without a doubt, one of the most iconic moments in this episode is the whole Dirty Dan versus Pinhead Larry battle, and that came from Sandy's sleepy ramblings. And that right there alone tells you just how iconic that these ramblings were. They were key to making this episode so great. Plus, like the general fact that she was in such a deep sleep that she straight up thought that she was dealing with actual criminals and that she was a Texas sheriff. It's just so funny, and it made for just the perfect amount of stupid nonsense gags that felt like they were perfectly in context. Like her threatening to skin them and make a pair of size 6 boots.
I'm gonna rip your arms off, flapjacks.
Even as far as like her crazy over-the-top violent demeanor. The way that she ripped Patrick's head off and pursued SpongeBob so violently. I'm just going to be honest and say that they did a phenomenal job of making Sandy look absolutely terrifying as she was chasing them. The animators here genuinely did great work in making this squirrel appear as if she was some giant angry bear or something like that. On the note of Sandy being kinda scary here though, I hate to take things in a morbid direction again, but anyone else find it kind of messed up that when she thought she was a Texas sheriff, she genuinely attacked them and ended up burying them in shallow graves right outside of her house? Like, there was no cemetery or anything like that. She just dug the graves herself and put them there. When we look at it from that angle, it's even more freaky. It almost gives like backwoods, hillbilly, wrong turn, Resident Evil 7 kind of vibes. Putting us back on the rails though, focusing on what genuinely made this such a special episode, my favorite part had to have been the scene where SpongeBob and Patrick first go into her tree and they see her sleeping. They immediately decide to start messing with her, which has her talking about throwing them in jail at taxpayers' expense and calling them nothing but pure evil, just like newspaper comics. Again, the true golden comedy really is in the small bits that you catch in Sandy's groggy muttering. Even more hilarious than that, though, absolutely, was the moment where Patrick decides that he's gonna show SpongeBob the true meaning of disturbing, and then he turns around and makes his back talk to him. Like, this is one of those moments that is immediately burned into your brain the first time you see it, and you never forget it after that first time. It's just way too out of left field, but at the same time, it's not surprising for Patrick. I will say, though, in a bit of a different direction, what was surprising was the fact that Patrick somehow knew instinctively that it was okay for him to take his helmet off in here. I mean, it's super odd because, again, they've never seen snow before. I guess technically they did in the Christmas special, which would have been one episode before this, but I am not sure if that was real snow. I thought it was part of SpongeBob decorating, if I recall correctly. Plus, when they saw it in this one, they immediately questioned what it was, which is also evidence to it being their first time encountering it. It's just really odd, though, that Patrick, of all people, would have seen this and connected the dots that this stuff is actually frozen water, realizing that he could just take his helmet off and be okay. Even more hilarious, though, is realizing that obviously this would not ever work. Like, you can't just take your pet goldfish outside in the snow and expect him to survive without water. Fish can't survive on land just because it's snowing. But still, cartoon logic is cartoon logicking full force here. All in all, though, this episode is one that I truly look back on with just the most rose-colored goggles. Maybe it's the Dirty Dan memes, maybe it's the nostalgia factor, or maybe it's the hilarity in the moment where they very carefully and delicately rip Sandy's fur out with duct tape. Like, this moment was just so obscene. And they just keep doing it over and over, and besides roaring in pain, Sandy had no idea what was happening. She wasn't waking up, she wasn't attacking them, she was just sleeping through it as they literally removed every last bit of her fur. On that note, too, was SpongeBob's eyebrow goatee combo not just the funniest look you've ever seen him rock? The fact that the colors were just so perfectly fitting for him, too. This one was just drawn with so much gusto, and I have so much love and respect for it, as I do for the entirety of this episode. Honestly, it really wouldn't feel right to give this one anything less than a 10. This episode is just flawless. There isn't a single moment here that fell flat, or anything that feels like it needs drastic changing. It's just overall a truly iconic cornerstone of episodes from Season 2. Looking at the future as well, I am just so hyped for what's to come. In a few ways, I'll be honest and say that my heart breaks just a tiny bit to realize that we're finished with the entirety of Season 1 already, and that we're already so far into Season 2. But I am genuinely happy to say that there are a lot of episodes ahead of us on this journey, and a lot of them are truly excellent episodes that flex a lot of what made the first few seasons of this show its peak. And on top of that, they're episodes that, just like the few we checked out today, prove just why this might be the funniest season of SpongeBob. But after that amazing leg of this journey, I have to ask, what do you guys think? Are you enjoying this deep dive into SpongeBob Season 2? Are you stoked to see what episodes come next? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Of course, I have to give a massive shout out to my friends in the True 90s Kids tier over on Patreon and here on YouTube through YouTube memberships. You guys are the absolute best. I totally recognize that the economy is not that good at all right now, and the fact that you are all willing to donate to me every month isn't something that I take lightly. I feel so lucky to be able to put your names at the end of each of these videos. Again, thank you so much for your support, and of course, thank you to all of my patrons and YouTube members. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and give a little praise to the algorithm in hopes that it pushes this one to everyone else. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Peace.